Quite incredible how quickly this is going to go. And as you know, often when you get to 15, it's like, well, something that's very, very much a Cape Town tradition. It's being a case of Optiberg or Oppiberg. So you're like on halfway and then it's downhill. But that's for then. My name is Ashraf Garda. Assalamu alaikum and welcome indeed to the show. And the show is lots to talk about. We're going to tackle the issue in the big picture, which we're going to start right away, about xenophobia. And you know, how do we as South Africa as a country, how do we stop xenophobia? So the bigger picture around it, we're going to have two different takes on that one. We'll also talk about what's going on in Pakistan, and there's really two different angles on that. The former Pakistani cricketer, now the former Pakistani Prime Minister, Imran Khan, deposed as the PM yesterday. So significant changes there. What does that really mean? If you tell you what, you follow the news angles, there are so many different ways to look at that story, accepting the one that is true is the thousands of people out in the streets of the big cities of in Pakistan, like Lahore, I understand, and Karachi overnight. But we'll talk about that. As always, your thoughts do matter. So you can WhatsApp, which is probably the quickest way to connect with us, 061 766 0355, 061 766 0355. But also you can post comments on all of the Salam Media social media platforms, and feel free to engage with me on my own social media platforms. Wherever you are, will certainly find me. Okay, but this program itself brought to you by the African Muslims Agency. Imagine a world where every family has food for suhoor and iftar in Ramadan. You can call the AMA on 010 0722 262.
This Ramadan,
Africa.
Join Africa Muslims Agency to provide meals to the fasting for 100 Rand a day, a food hamper for 1,500 Rand, or feed a village for 15,000 Rand per day. If we can imagine a better world, we can create it. Donate today. Call AMA on 011-834-8685 or donate online. Africa Muslims Agency, commemorating 35 years of empowering, educating, inspiring.
Are you looking for a cross-border road transport company that is committed in achieving high safety standards, who is fast and efficient, and also excellent customer service? Garda Global specializes in cross-border transport from South Africa to Mozambique, Zimbabwe, Zambia, and Malawi. Garda Global, situated at 10 Daniel Road, Ben Rose, Johannesburg. For inquiries, contact our trained staff on 011-614-3108 or email info@gardaglobal.co.za. Safe, long haul into Africa is our business. Garda Global Transport.
It's been a household name for years. It's been an important ingredient in South African kitchens, and it's been an affordable, healthy choice for your family. Helios. First our pure sunflower cooking oil, and now introducing Helios margarines and spreads. Following the same traditions and tastes you've grown to love and trust from Helios. Fortified with vitamins A, D, and E, also rich in omega-3 and 6 essential fatty acids for a healthy eating lifestyle. Helios margarine and spreads, available now at all leading South African supermarkets. Helios margarine, the tradition lives on.
Zakah has the power to end extreme poverty. If the whole world gave zakah, it could end extreme poverty many times over. Islamic Relief has been distributing zakah for over 38 years. Our zakah policy complies with strict Sharia guidelines. It's endorsed by qualified scholars, and it only goes to eligible rights holders. So, harness the power of your zakah with Islamic Relief.
Mornings with Ashraf Garda. Connect on Twitter at Ashraf Garda. This is the Ashraf Garda Show, 8 to 10 a.m. and you're listening to Salam Media.
Okay, so first up, let's pick up on the issue of xenophobia. It's been a concern for a good few years, and it comes and then it goes, and it appears now it's not just resurfaced as an isolated thing. It seems like it's orchestrated and planned, fueled by vested interests, and they're literally going door to door. It's a big issue. So we thought, let's talk about it. How does South Africa, how do we stop xenophobia? Now, it's interesting as we get to that, the president of the country, Cyril Ramaphosa today has, in his weekly newsletter, which comes out every Monday, saying, attacking those we suspect of wrongdoing merely because they are a foreign national is not an act of patriotism. It is immoral, racist, and criminal. In the end, it will lead to xenophobia, whose consequences we have lived through in previous years. Well, many may say we're living through it right now. So we're going to get two takes on this issue. We'll chat to Sandile Swana later on from the political aspect. But firstly, let's start with the issue of just understanding, the othering of other people, and this issue of consciously othering other people, or sometimes unconsciously doing that. So with me is Claudelle, Dr. Claudelle Fournette, the founder of Brave Inflections. Claudelle, good morning and good chatting to you.
Good morning. Thank you for having me, Ashraf.
Well, thank you for giving off your time, right? And I certainly value your opinion on this issue. First of all, let's start with what you know. Are we experiencing a state of xenophobia in our country?
And I think let me start with talking about that word xenophobia. Because we're using it because we've picked it up from the media, but what does it actually mean? Xenophobia comes from the Greek. It essentially means, literally translated, fear or hatred of others that you find strange or foreign. I'm not sure that what we're dealing with in South Africa is necessarily fear of others or hatred of others, as opposed to dealing with the internal issues. And I think we kind of need to expect to see what we're seeing now. It is really about resources, and it's about scarce resources, right? So if you look at where we're finding these kinds of incidents, it's where people feel that they don't have enough, and there are people who are coming from other territories taking what they already don't have. And then, of course, there's the criminal elements as well that people are very upset about. Now, if I look back at the township where I grew up in, and I compare it to the time where I grew up in, so many, many moons ago, it's chalk and cheese. If I look at our young people, the amount of drug addicts that we now have in the townships is really frightful. So I can imagine, if I were to place myself in the shoes of parents who are dealing with kids who are being exposed to the drugs, who then become criminals themselves, that I would want to deal with the source of it. So I think we really need to first talk about what is driving this. I don't think we are dealing with South Africans just lashing out at foreigners because they fear foreigners or they hate foreigners. I honestly think it is about their circumstances that they live in every day. And here we need to hold government accountable, but also fellow South Africans. What point?
Yeah, what I think it's an interesting point you raised, because maybe that explains why in middle class communities or even wealthier suburbs, right, and maybe many of them have less black people in those suburbs by sheer numbers. That's why you're not getting those attacks, because there's a relative equality which they're seeing. They're not fighting for the same jobs, they're not fighting for the same spaces. So the fact that someone's foreign is like, cool, because we actually all aspiring to something on a higher level, and that's why we're seeing it in more underprivileged townships. Is that what you're saying, right?
Absolutely. And here I think we need to go to human nature. Right. So at the base of who we are, we're not very different to the rest of the animals in the animal kingdom. Right. So first, it is about our instincts to survive before we get to what I would refer to as a higher order thinking or our executive function. So if you were to look at it from the brain perspective, sitting in your limbic system is where your emotions are sitting and where your fear response is sitting. Where we talk about fight or flight response is really where it's in our primitive side of the brain. We are expecting people to operate in their prefrontal cortex, where you have your executive functioning. But as human beings, and we first need to satisfy our very, very basic needs, and that is survival, bread on the table. And this is what the job thing is about. I'm not concerned about somebody taking my job just for it. It is they're taking my livelihood away from me.
And there's a fear factor around that. So, okay, I hear what you're saying. So this is really a fight for space, a fight for survival. Okay. Now, if that's the case, and you mentioned the point, let's go to the root causes. So what then is the root cause, and then how do we deal with it?
Look, I think we do need to acknowledge that, firstly, our past, and I do have great appreciation for the fact that our government has had to deal with a significant challenge in turning the country around. But our government has also failed us in ensuring, I don't think that they have done enough to turn our situation around. I don't think our policies are pro-poor. And in a developmental state like South Africa, you cannot just have a focus on one part of the society that really is where the power is sitting, because it's where the money is sitting. We have to think about the majority. And the reality is, you are July 2021. The principles are the same. The underlying issues are exactly the same. And we get shocked when we see South Africans do things like the looting, like what we refer to as the xenophobia attacks. But if you really sit down and think about it, why would you have a different response from human beings who have literally been dehumanized by a previous regime, and the current regime hasn't done enough to bring them to a point where they can feel that they can live with dignity? What do we expect?
So how then do we deal with the utter desperation? So if you gave the example of KZN just under a year ago now, and what we experience daily in townships, at the core is this utter desperation, not to get a new mobile phone or not to upgrade to something fancy, but the desperation just to live and to survive on a daily basis. So how then do we deal with that utter desperation?
Look, I think we need to, as a country, think a hell of a lot more strategically about how do we empower our people. We tend to talk about jobs, and therefore our policies tend to be pro-business. But there are lots of examples in different parts of the world, and especially when you look east, where the focus is on giving the individual on the ground the tools so that they can go and fish for themselves, instead of just giving people fish, right? And I think we kind of need to be honest about the fact that when we keep people poor, we keep the power over the people. So there's a little bit of a problem there. But we need to do a lot more in our education so people have the base that they need to look after themselves. We need to have policies that make it easier for people to start their own businesses, but train people so that they know how to do it, and just create more opportunities. And even when it comes to business and big business, put a little more pressure on them, because I think that they can do more.
Well, here's a question. I mean, you said, the township you came from. Which is the township? And there's a reason I'm asking that question. Which is the township you were from?
I was raised in Easterus. That's
okay. So that's
Boksburg.
No, that's Pretoria, right?
Pretoria, yes.
Yeah. Okay, got that. Now, would I be right in saying that your original township and many others, and they all shades of black, so black colored, black Indian, black African, all these townships, that by and large, right, they haven't changed much in 28 years. And that's the core of the problem, that if we were going to be changing the country, and that's the reason why we voted in 1994, that one of the issues to measure transformation of a country is, why does a township still look like a township, right? And then when you look below that layer, you find all sorts of problems in terms of the why. So therefore, my question to you is, why has there been an underinvestment by government in upgrading townships in almost 3 decades now, when it's so obvious that that's the right thing to do?
Yeah, I think you have a combination of factors, Ashraf. One of the factors is I think a fundamental flaw in the ANC policy is the cadre deployment. So if we're placing people in positions who do not have what it takes, a combination of the strategic thinking the ability to reimagine a world where our people actually are lifted up, and the competence to make it happen. And then you also have the corruption, of course, where people are looking after themselves as opposed to doing what you would be expecting of leaders, and that is to do what is necessary to make sure that people have what they have. So if one looks at the flow of money, start with the budget allocation, because that would tell you where the priorities are politically. And then you look at who do we have in place to ensure that the budget is being utilized appropriately. And then thirdly, look at the flow of money. I think another component that we must not lose sight of is the increasing inequality, which I think to a large degree we need to put at the doorstep of our policies. The greater the inequality, the more and more you will also have this dissatisfaction amongst people. And so when I grew up, we were poor, right? So I didn't even bother to ask my parents for stuff because the standard answer was there's no money. But I didn't feel like I was missing out a lot because in my immediate and in my line of sight, we were all on the same level. But as South Africa changed and people started to become exposed more and more to what is happening on the other side of the fence, what do you expect is going to happen when people see the enormous amount of wealth on the other side of the fence and we remain with nothing? The dissatisfaction levels, of course, are going to increase even more. So I really think, to come back to our conversation around xenophobia, that it's really fear of not being able to survive.
Okay.
But you've
Well,
got to couple it.
well, there you are, and I think you're right about the inequality. If everybody is equally poor, then there's inequality. It sounds bizarre, but I think it's true.
Yeah.
It's the inequality that is the problem. So, moving on, then, I mean, in a nutshell, what you're saying basically, those that are elected to lead and appointed to lead, by and large, have not quite led, have they?
No, absolutely not. What is a concern, though, Ashraf, and just to bring in, when we're talking about the xenophobia and the type of biases that one may see play out, is what we have now, and you were talking about people going door to door, is we're starting to frame and we're moving away from what the root cause is, right? So focusing on the symptoms, and we're putting labels on those symptoms, which eventually may then get us to a point where there is hatred, where the hatred should actually be on the other side, right? And if you look at what happened in Rwanda in '94, for example, that is a classic example of touching on people's emotions, going into their fear, but then channeling it in the wrong direction. So over time, we may then develop what would then be real, in my view, real xenophobia and biases that would build up.
Yeah, but that's certainly,
people.
I mean, that's certainly what happened in Rwanda, and it played out
Yeah.
where, I mean, the Hutus then attacked the minority Tutsis and to devastating effect, not just attack, like mass murders on a national scale. That we know in Rwanda is not the case right now, which then brings me onto the what now. So, having explained the scenario, what should South Africa do, like ASAP? Because increasingly so, people are being defined by their ethnicity, and that's a problem, right? So what should we do now, and what should we do long term to address those inequalities?
Right. So I think, first of all, we need to start to push government to do what government needs to do. But we also need to understand that government can't do everything. So we need leadership in our various communities and the various structures to start to change the discourse in the direction where we want the discourse to go. So in shaping the minds and the belief system in our country. It's a difficult thing for South Africans because we are very race conscious in this country, and that is because of our past. Right? So it's from the time that we were young people growing up, and we have these messages that we've been bombarded with very directly, covertly, and overtly as well. Breaking through that means that we need leadership to have very, very honest conversations and start to lead in helping people to reframe, because even the thinking about self needs a bit of reframing. Because if we think about this xenophobia, where is it directed at? Because we have a lot of white foreign nationals in the country. We have a lot of Chinese foreign nationals in the country. And that is actually where a lot of the money is flowing, if you think about it. If the amount of money that the foreign nationals on the ground may be receiving in terms of salaries or businesses that they run is minuscule compared to what white foreign nationals, for example, get in this country. So we have a very, very skewed view of race, but also a very skewed view of self. And I think part of the conversation is, why would I attack Black? Why do we have Black on Black violence? Why am I not seeing in the broader scheme of things where the money is actually flowing to? That's a deep conversation.
It certainly is. Not that you want to have any sort of violence, but I certainly get your point. Claudelle, we're going to leave it at that. Thank you for your time. It's been fascinating, and I think, and with talking to you, and you sort of showed some great insight. So I'm going to, besides replaying this at a later stage, feel free to tweet it. By the way, tweet some of the other thoughts that you may have, and just tag us. I'd gladly just reposition that and share that with other people. So there we are, Dr. Claudelle van Eck, the founder of Brave Inflection. So, did she get you thinking? Because I mean, that's really the purpose of what we call this daily big picture. It's moving beyond the obvious, finding deeper meaning into some of the biggest problems facing us as a country and as a world, and getting, really deep and understanding the big picture for you as the audience to know a lot more than what you know right now. So that's one take from Dr. Claudelle van Eck. We'll get another thought right after this.
Only 12 Rand. By committing to a monthly contribution, you can assist us in reaching out to more communities and deserving individuals. A once-off donation will also be highly appreciated in helping us achieve our monthly target. For more information, call us on 011 834 6046. SANZAF, changing lives through development and relief.
Babu, why don't you loosen your belt a bit more?
But why now?
Well, it's very tight, blocking air to your brain.
Haju, this is only a start. I need to tighten up a bit more. Funds are tight and the cost of living is high.
Funds are not tight. It's your haram insurance which is tightening our budget.
Okay, Haju. I will call my insurance friend tomorrow.
Maybe I must tighten up on my cooking from now on too.
No, Haju, we don't need to tighten up. It's okay. Look, I'm even throwing away my belt.
Don't tighten your belt. Change your insurance. Leaving Riba Insurance is easier than you think. Call Amana IFS for all your personal and commercial takaful needs. 0861 786 393. Amana, leave Riba for good. Amana IFS is a registered financial services provider.
One of the most important things you can do on this earth is to let people know they are not alone. That the frustration of communities who struggle to earn the very basic is not their cry alone. Discharging your zakah is the starting point for creating a sustainable community and taking action. It's the impetus for creating lasting change and hope. Donate your zakah to the Al Fida Foundation, supporting over 10,000 Muslim families in the Eastern and Western Cape of South Africa. We need your help to assist our neighbors of need. Contact the Al Fida Foundation at 041 484 1288 or view or visit our website at www.alfida.co.za. The Al Fida Foundation, your partner in social investment.
Abu Hurairah narrated that he heard the Prophet Muhammad, may the peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, say, in black seed there is a healing for every disease except death. This Ramadan, experience the health benefits of this ancient blessed seed by using the Tib Black Seed range. Black seed assists the body to boost immunity, regulate blood sugar levels, reduce inflammation, and act as a potent antioxidant. Experience a holistic approach to health by introducing the Tib Black Seed range into your Ramadan routine. Available in capsules, pure cold-pressed oil, and a vapor rub. Trust Tib Health Sciences for quality black seed products. For more information, visit blackseed.co.za. Available at leading pharmacies.
Imagine fasting and not knowing if you'll have something to eat at iftar. This is a sad reality for thousands of new and indigenous Muslims in southern Africa. Each Ramadan, the Islamic Dawah movement provides iftar meals in township masjids. All it takes is 20 Rand. 20 Rand provides a meal to a Muslim brother, sister, or child. Your help would make a world of difference. Call IDM on 031 304 6883 or visit idmsa.org to donate. IDM, taking Islam to as many hearts and homes as possible.
At Sentio, our Invest for Good philosophy is based on a real desire to use our investment skills for the benefit of broader society. We are committed to supporting our community by investing responsibly, giving charitably, and developing talent that will transform the investment industry. As an ethically based asset manager, we are focused on delivering superior risk-adjusted returns for our clients, regardless of market conditions. Visit us at www.sentio-capital.com for more information on our Sharia investment products and start saving with us today. Sentio Capital Management. Invest for good. Sentio Capital Management is an authorized financial services provider.
This is the Ashraf Garda Show, 8 to 10 a.m., and you're listening to Salam Media.
And what about your thoughts on the conversation we've already had with Dr. Claudelle von Ack around xenophobia or the battle for resources, which effectively is what she's actually saying. 0617660355. Do share your comments, or you can even post it on the various Salam Media social media platforms. I certainly want to know what you make of that. We'll be chatting about the developments regarding the African National Congress as the ruling party. Whatever happens to them happens to the country, as we know. Sandile Gumeri will talk about that, winning the race to lead the chairperson of the Kuruleni region and the impact that it has. That comes up just now. Let's get another thought, however, on the issue of xenophobia. So we've had one view. Sandile Swana is with me, he's a political analyst. Sandile, I appreciate your time. Good morning.
Good morning to you, Ashraf, and to your listeners.
Good to connect, and you've got this big responsibility of helping us to understand the question: how do we stop South Africa from becoming, how do we stop the xenophobia attacks in South Africa? How do you respond to that?
The first thing is that in many ways in South Africa, xenophobia is often stoked and authorized at the highest levels of the elites. You will remember that whilst Tito Mboweni was still the Minister of Finance in recent times, he made a startling statement that when he came back from exile in 1990, when he would attend at restaurants, the number of foreigners was negligible, who were waiters and working in those restaurants, but today it's 90%. Now, when Stats SA went to examine that, when it is compared to Stats SA statistics, you find that it's probably about 6 to 8% in any event who are foreigners. There's nothing, it's not substantiated by actual labor statistics in South Africa. So what you then find is that failing politicians who are failing to lead the economy, who are failing to lead society, randomly find scapegoats. So you cannot actually, when I say randomly find scapegoats, they will make statements that are not substantiated by Stats SA. They are not substantiated by the Human Sciences Research Council or any major university in South Africa. Those statements, they come from the political gut, and they are made in the public to lead the masses who don't check any statistics into a frenzy of xenophobia.
And that you think, and you think that itself then plays out from the top, where as it filters down, we begin othering other people, right?
Exactly. So you will find that previously there was a big cover-up when the Zulu king made similar statements that the previous Zulu king, that eventually unleashed xenophobia. So when the people at the top, the leading elites of South African society, make these statements, those statements sometimes are taken quite literally by the masses, and unfortunate consequences follow. So the first thing which Cyril Ramaphosa is already attending to, competently so, is to change the narrative at the top. And he has got to pull in cabinet ministers and other leaders to say, guys, you cannot continue promoting xenophobia in South Africa.
Okay, so so that's what he can do with his party, the ruling party, the African National Congress. Then, of course, there are other political parties. The EFF has their own position. The DA has Action SA. I'm looking at, and so on and so on, of course. And there are also grassroots movements that also sort of appear to be othering in some form or the other. What do you make of what they should be doing?
Yes, no, let us talk about something because there are two sides, at least two sides to the story. I listened to David Spoor, who has got a great understanding of human rights as a lawyer, and he was explaining this thing. So you will find that there's a whole teaching on human rights that is going on to teach people to respect other people's human rights and to stay away from this xenophobia idea. So it's not just the EFF and Operation Tudula and Mashaba and all those guys who are saying something. There are other South Africans, eminent South Africans, well-proven leaders on the ground who are teaching society the other way of living. And you'll forgive me for raising this. Listening to your previous interview, let me state that I was born in Soweto. I'm a Sowetan by birth. And in that process, I ended up living after the 76 riots. I lived in the Crown Mines compound, the mining compound. Now, in those two places that I lived and attended the Crown Mine School. Now, what happens is that we as kids, we never try to discover the identity, the origins of any other person. We just played and we continued playing and enjoying ourselves. So there's a big question as to how do you end up trying to find out a person's identity, whether their papers are in order? When my father came to Joburg from the Eastern Cape in 1960, he had no papers. You know that they were prohibited from coming here. He got bogus papers. And we became natives of Joburg through corruptly procured papers for this. So there's this thing, you can't just take it superficially. I'm a Joburg by birth, I'm a native now of Gauteng. But actually, the origins of my nativity are actually thoroughly corrupt in any event. And today, there are many people who are becoming natives of South Africa, black or white, coming from Eastern Europe, coming from England, coming from everywhere. Also, some of them following dubious methods. So the next thing I want to say about the issue,
and you're saying, I mean, just to interject you there, you're saying that whatever the dubious methods, starting with your own father, it is rooted, do I take it, in desperation, isn't it? The desperate need to survive.
No, it's a created desperation, by the way. It's an artificial desperation because the leaders of the time said, if you are Xhosa speaking, you cannot be in Joburg. So if they were not there, if those leaders were not there, my father wouldn't have had a problem. So anybody who's got a problem with papers, it's an artificial problem that is designed to create an industry such as the corrupt Lindela Deportation Center, which was run by Bosasa. So the issue of dealing with foreigners is also a corrupt industry by itself, where politicians are involved and certain types of business, corrupt business people are also involved, where the ordinary person who may come from Malawi or come from Zimbabwe is then the victim who is consumed by predatory elites of South Africa. So
Okay,
that is that needs to be addressed.
All right, got that. So do you think then are what we're experiencing, let's say in Diepsloot this week, it could be something else last week, is what we're experiencing xenophobia?
No, I agree with Dr. Claudelle that actually this is artificially created with political, economic objectives, and more especially cover-up of the poor performance of the leading elites in various spheres of South African society. Let me just make this quick point. Technologically, if you think about it, technologically, any person who arrives in South Africa could have full papers immediately on arrival. We have biometrics today. So any person could go to a local post office or a local police station and be recorded. So if the problem is that people are not documented, all your biometrics can be captured in 15 minutes, and it's done. And anybody who wants to know who you are, or if your fingerprints are found on a scene of crime, it can be traced. So technologically, there is no constraint to solving the problem of whether people are documented or not. The constraint comes from the issue that it takes long to process applications for citizenship, for permanent residency, for asylum, and so on. And that should be separated from the issue of documenting people.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Documenting means you've arrived. Now, whether you get citizenship or you want to go back home next week, I mean, that's a different conversation, right? Now, we've touched on the issue of inequality already, so I'm not going to just pick up on that right now. Accepting this, you have made the point, right, that government or people, those in leadership at different levels, haven't quite played their part. Now, I'm suggesting, as Claudelle has suggested, that the inequality that plays out in the townships, right, is what ferments the othering of other people because of the utter desperation. I mean, so do you see the same thing?
This is a problem. And we need to understand this so-called inequality. And I will give you a concrete example. Two concrete examples, one from Joburg, one from the Western Cape. In the townships, there were shops there, right, owned by black people as we're growing up in the 70s and the 80s and so on. So, but when the economic system was changing, shops were starting to be in garages, where there are convenience stores. Shops are changing to be in the mall. Those people, through their own leadership, they were not able to conceptualize themselves as the owners of those malls, or actually relocating and making sure that they are operating from the malls or changing the economy. So a lot of them lost out, and they are out in the streets and they have nothing. I have met a highly educated person from Cape Town, organizing local spaza shops in Cape Town, because they don't know how to organize themselves into buying units and competing with the Somalis. So the average Somali who's a shopkeeper, you'll find that in Somali was a teacher, in Somali was a civil engineer. So the average educational level of the Somali or the Pakistani who is competing by running a shop in the township versus the South African is not the same. And our leaders have not understood that, and they've not been able to do anything about that, to say people need to be competitive, and our people are not equipped to be competitive. Therefore, they resort to violence.
Okay, well, I think that's a very, very good point. In fact, my first experience of a Somalian in South Africa, just after democracy, who was a delivery truck driver. Well, I mean, a pizza delivery guy, and he said, my people have fled all around the world because of the civil war in Somalia. But he said he's a crop engineer, but he was delivering pizzas. So I think I get your point, right? But here's the thing. Therefore, before we wrap up, how should South Africa, a country that is not rich in its resources to be able to help the 60 million people, right? What should our policy therefore be in dealing with immigrants? So one is immigrants that willingly want to live in the country. The others who are refugees. How should we be dealing with them when they enter the country? And then, of course, you're getting others who are arriving illegally, jumping a fence, doing whatever they want. What should our approach be to that?
My view, at the most simplistic level, in our wards, there's a thing called the ward committee. The ward committee should be able to know who are the people who live here, not in order to identify them for expulsion or anything, just to make sure there's population registration. And technology needs to be available at ward level to make sure that everybody is properly registered. They are easily to identify them. It's easy to trace them for whatever purposes, including the prevention of crime, but without dealing with the issue of immigration. The issue of immigration should be dealt with by professionals who are dealing only with immigration. Right now, we mix immigration, we mix drug dealing, we mix all kinds of things, and we heap those things on top of so-called illegal foreigners. But those are different specialties. And the last thing I want to say, seeing that we're running out of time, let us not say when we've got incompetent economic leaders in South Africa that we are short of resources. Our economic growth rate should be at about 7%. And since 1994, it has never reached 7%. We are lingering at about 1.9%. Even the Western Cape, which claims to be doing better, is not exceeding 2% economic growth rate, not because we are short of resources. We are short of resourcefulness. We are short of creativity. We are short of innovation. We are short of strategic economic thinking.
Okay, got that. So here's the last thing. What, with regard to immigration, right? Where should we raise the bar or lower the bar? Meaning, some countries allow you to enter, but there's a certain, not to live, but to immigrate. There's a certain barrier in terms of your skills competency. Should we put, as South Africa, should we put a certain level of skills competency before people, whoever they are, from Africa, from Europe, wishes to immigrate to this country?
I don't think that is even necessary. I'll put it to you very differently. The person who emigrates is above average. For you to think of coming from Malawi or from Somalia to here, you are already an entrepreneur. You are already far above the creativity levels of both the people in Somalia and both the people in South Africa. Just to take that step alone. And the people, when they are here, if we are to survey them without prejudice, you will find that there's a lot of innovation, a lot of creativity that these people are bringing to our country. If you need civil engineers, let me make this last statement. I don't know how much time we have.
We got 30 seconds, yeah. Go ahead.
I was part of a team under the Construction Education and Training Authority, CETA, before the 2010 stadiums. And our job was to say, how do we create skills for SMMEs and Black people in South Africa for constructions of the stadia and so on? The construction of stadia started before we could finish discussing what we are planning to do.
Yeah, good point.
Right, and therefore the welders and other skills had to be imported because we did not do our job. And then we want to blame foreigners, we want to blame this one. A lot of the time, South Africans are just simply not doing their job.
Another conversation for another time. Thank you for your insights, Sandile, Swana. And you can, in fact, feel free to tweet me as well. We'll certainly share those tweets in terms of confirming what you've just said and maybe other opinions that you couldn't have a chance to actually talk to me about right now. So there you are, another take on the issue. Thank you. On the issue of xenophobia and what should South Africa as a country do to certainly stem what is being labeled as xenophobia, or should we do that? Well, what about the African National Congress? There's a whole... There's a challenge that's taken place in terms of the provinces or the regions, and there's a significant election that took place in the Kuruleni region. That's in fact not in the Kuruleni itself, in the Tshwane. No, in terms of in the whole KZN region that has got huge significance to the country. We'll talk about that in a moment.